Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan. Thanks for joining us for our Thursday update recorded on the 27th of February. We've got two tropical cyclones at the moment north of New Zealand. Tropical Cyclone Seru, which is falling apart and is not likely to be a cyclone by the time we basically get to Friday. Still worth keeping an eye on if you're around Fiji and Tonga, as it is going to slowly drift that way. The good news is conditions should be easing around Vanuatu as we go across Thursday, but still a bit of wind and rain in the very south. But all eyes are on Severe Tropical Cyclone Alfred, Category 3 when we recorded this. The tracking of Alfred is complicated because of this huge high pressure zone over the Tasman Sea. If you remove that high pressure zone, we would be forecasting that this storm would come straight down to New Zealand. The Coriolis effect. As the Earth spins, cyclones that are in this location generally like to pull to the southeast. But it's being blocked by this high pressure. Not only that, as it starts to track southwards, this big southeasterly flow pushes into it, and that can cause the storm to stall, fall apart, or it can just very gently guide it towards Australia. So that is why the track of Alfred isn't yet locked in, whether it's for Queensland, New South Wales, or even New Zealand later next week. For now, we're not at threat from any of the tropical cyclones due to the high pressure zone right here in the New Zealand area. Here is the outlook for Seru. This is the one that is tracking southwards and then turns east and then it falls apart south of Fiji. Notice the little upward tick at the end here. That is because the storm is being, again, affected by that high pressure zone further south around New Zealand. As that high expands, it starts to nudge that back northwards. It is still likely to fall apart, but we are going to see some rain as a result of that system south of Fiji, or at least around Fiji and Tonga in the days ahead. Let's move on now. Let's have a look at the forecast for Friday. So we kick off with a few downpours around the top of the North Island. High pressure starting to move out to the east of the country, but it is still out to the west to some degree. Most of it is out to the east. We will see a few convergence showers into the afternoon, possibly heavy. Good luck if you need some rain. Otherwise, it's a dry day right around the country, and you can see the two cyclones up here to the north, with this one directly north of New Zealand, Seru, likely to fall apart. On Saturday, not a lot of change to the New Zealand forecast. High pressure is still mostly out to the east over the Chatham Islands, but we've still got an area of high pressure just west of the North Island too. That keeps much of the country settled and dry. Still again, a few showers bubbling up in the central sort of upper part of the North Island, especially around Bay of Plenty and Waikato. They'll be fairly isolated, but they could still be quite heavy. Might even be a thunderstorm, so keep an eye on that on the radar and the Met Service thunderstorm outlooks. We've also got this cold front moving into the South Island. Now, it's a little bit windy through the Southern Alps and around Cook Strait, nothing too serious, but this front does move up the country. Well, it's barely a front, but it's the line of showers that starts to move up the country. And you see it a little bit on Saturday. On Sunday, a few more showers move up the west coast, but I got to say, that is a mostly dry forecast dominated by the high pressure belt over the top of the country and also out to the east of New Zealand. That is also pulling down a subtropical airflow into the South Island, so your temperatures on Sunday aren't going to be too cold. Now Monday, that little narrow area of rain, it's basically a convergence stuck between this high pressure zone off the western North Island and the other high pressure zone exiting Tasmania, and so it's kind of trapped in between. So you can get some heavy falls when it's like that, but it won't be widespread. You'll see a few showers moving up the South Island on Monday. Heaviest falls will be over on the west coast. Might be a couple of isolated showers in the western lower part of the North Island. I don't expect they will amount to very much at all. And you might also start to see a westerly breeze blowing across the North Island. That'll be a bit more northwest in some areas. That may also help to lift up your temperatures. Now Tuesday, we've got a proper cold front. As that high pressure zone in the North Island clears off to the east, and the next high pressure zone coming out of the Tasmania area moves into the lower South Island, this next high pressure zone starts off with a southerly flow, and that's what you see here. Now it might be locally and easterly for a time, but generally speaking, it's dredging up this colder airflow. And so you will see on Tuesday some rain moving up the South Island, especially leaning on the eastern side, because as this moves northwards, the high is moving eastwards. So it pushes it up and across sideways as it does so, which means if you live at the top of the North Island, you're probably not going to see very much rain out of that system as it moves northwards. By Wednesday, you see what I mean? It clears off to the east as the high bulldozes in over the South Island. Now we start to look at the tropical cyclone, Alfred. up here around the Coral Sea coming into the Tasman Sea. Now there are still a lot of questions remaining about where this is going to go. Some of the computer modelling shows it further out to sea. You might notice the spinning here isn't quite lined up with the centre of that storm. That's because the animated wind map on here is from the European modelling and the rain is from the American modelling, and it starts to give you an idea as to how aligned those big global models are. And they are fairly aligned, but that slight difference of being out at sea or closer to Australia means all the difference for Australians worrying about the weather. And for New Zealand, it does make a difference too, because if it comes into Australia, it will likely fall apart. If it remains at sea, it remains a threat to places like Norfolk Island, Lord Howe Island, and potentially New Zealand. But as I say, until we get this high pressure belt cleared away from the country, we don't expect a lot of change. Here is the 7-day rainfall departure from normal. This just shows you how much wetter or dry it is compared to usual for the end of February and the start of March, and it really clearly shows the two cyclone tracks. So the Alfred is an interesting one to keep an eye on. At this stage, it is showing it at sea. Yesterday's update had it being nudged inland just north of Brisbane. So that's still a lot of wiggle room to be sorted out. So we'll be having to make another update tomorrow, Friday, and then probably again going into next week. This is not yet locked in. So there we go. That is the forecast around New Zealand for the next few days ahead. We'll see you again tomorrow on Friday for our next update.